If you've ever built something with your own two hands and then watched someone else try to erase your name from it, you're going to understand every word of what I'm about to tell you. My name is Camille Boudreau. I'm 54 years old. For 18 years, I ran the kitchen at Maison Boudreau, a Creole restaurant in the Faubourg Marigny, 3 blocks off Frenchman Street, in a building my mother bought with cash in 1987 and never once talked about. If this is your first time here, hit like, hit subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I read every comment. This is the story of the year my business partner tried to lock me out of my own life's work and didn't know the floor under her feet belonged to me the entire time. My mother, Odile Boudreau, raised me alone above a laundromat on Elysian Fields after my father died young. She cleaned houses in the Garden District by day and cooked like a woman settling old scores by night. Red beans on Mondays, gumbo that took 2 days and no apologies. She taught me to cook the way some mothers teach their daughters to pray, with total seriousness, and the expectation that you'd pass it on. I opened Maison Boudreau when I was 36, in the building my mother had quietly bought a decade earlier. She never explained how a woman cleaning houses for a living had the cash for a building in the Marigny. I never asked. That was Odile. She moved through the world leaving very little trace of how she'd actually done anything, and expecting you to trust that she had her reasons. She passed 11 years ago. I kept cooking. The restaurant kept growing. By last year, we had 40 covers a night, a line out the door on weekends, and a write-up in a national food magazine that used the word essential. That's when I brought in Simone Delacroix. Simone was 36, sharp, MBA from Tulane, the kind of energy that walks into a room and immediately starts rearranging the furniture in her head. She'd worked front-of-house management at 2 hospitality groups downtown. She talked about scaling and brand equity in a way that made me nervous and curious in equal measure. I brought her in as a managing partner. 30% stake, full operational control of everything outside the kitchen. I kept the food, she kept the numbers. For the first 3 years it worked. She modernized our reservation system, renegotiated our linen contract, got us onto 3 best of New Orleans lists I'd never had the bandwidth to chase myself. I liked her. I want to be honest about that because it matters for what comes later. I liked her drive. I liked that she believed in what I'd built enough to bet her career on it. Then, 2 years ago, she brought in Julian Reyes. Julian was Simone's boyfriend. 34, called himself a creative director, had worked in branding for a boutique hotel chain in Austin. He came in as a consultant on our rebrand, new menus, new plating, a narrative refresh, he called it. I noticed things shifting slowly. Meetings that used to include me started happening without me, and I'd hear about the decisions after they were made. My mother's gumbo recipe, the one I'd never written down anywhere, the one that lived entirely in my hands and my memory, appeared on a new laminated menu insert under the heading Chef's Legacy Bowl, with a paragraph of marketing copy about Odile that Julian had written without ever meeting her. I told Simone it felt strange. She smiled the way people smile when they've already decided you're being sentimental. Camille, it's an homage. People love the story. It's good for the brand. I let it go. I told myself I was being precious about a business I no longer ran alone. I should not have let it go. In September, Theo Marchand, my sous chef, 12 years in that kitchen with me, a man who could read a room the way other people read weather, found me in the walk-in cooler after service. "Chef," he said, "you know there was an investor dinner last Tuesday. Simone and Julian hosted 6 people in the private room. Nobody told the kitchen. Nobody told you." I hadn't known. I checked the reservation log myself that night. Private room, 6 covers, booked directly by Simone. No notes, no name I recognized on the account. 2 weeks later, I found a printed pitch deck on the office printer that hadn't fully collected in the tray. 22 pages. Crescent Table Hospitality Group, expansion plan, 3 new locations, Maison Boudreau positioned as flagship concept, transitioning to consultant chef model. Consultant chef, not owner, not founder, consultant. I stood in that office with the pages in my hand and felt something go very still and very cold in my chest. 2 days after I found the deck, I came in for morning prep and found my name badge missing from the kitchen door. 18 years, my name on that door, Chef C. Boudreau, replaced overnight with a laminated sign that said simply, Kitchen. I asked the morning porter about it. He looked uncomfortable. Simone had it changed yesterday. Said something about updating the signage for the new brand guidelines. I walked into Simone's office. She was on a call. She held up one finger. 1 minute. The way you gesture at a delivery driver. I waited. I am not a woman who makes scenes in front of staff. I learned that from my mother, who could deliver devastating clarity in a completely calm voice. The same voice she used on difficult customers and difficult men her whole life. When Simone hung up, I said, "My name came off my own kitchen door." She didn't flinch. "It's just a rebrand thing, Camille. The badge doesn't change your role, doesn't it?" She looked at me the way you look at someone you've already filed under, handled. "We'll talk about your role at the partner meeting next month. There are some changes coming that I think will actually be good for you. Less pressure. More time to just cook without all the business stress." Less pressure. That's what people say right before they take something from you and expect gratitude for it. I didn't argue. I went back to my kitchen, tied my apron, and started the stock for that night's gumbo the way I'd done 6 nights a week for 18 years. My hands knew what to do, even when my head didn't. That same week, we replaced the cracked vinyl in the corner booth, the oldest one in the restaurant, the one that had been there since before I owned the place. Back when it was a corner grocery my mother used to send me to as a girl. The upholsterer found something wedged behind the wooden frame under the seat, a small leather ledger, water-stained at the corners, tied shut with kitchen twine. It was my mother's handwriting. I would know it anywhere, the particular slant, the way she crossed her sevens. I sat in that booth after close with Theo, and we read it together by the light of my phone. It wasn't a recipe book. It was a record, dates, amounts, and a running account of a building purchase in 1987, paid in installments over 6 years, structured deliberately so no single transaction would draw attention. And near the back, 4 sentences that stopped my breath entirely. "This building is not for sale, not ever, not by me and not by whoever comes after me. I have put it where no husband, no bank, and no clever young person with a business degree can ever take it from my daughter. She will not know until she needs to know. That is how I have kept everything that mattered." I sat in that booth for a long time. Theo didn't say anything. He just refilled my coffee and let me sit with it. The next morning I called an attorney. Marceline O'Coin's office was on Poydras Street, 14th floor, a wall of glass looking out over the river. She was maybe 60, silver-streaked hair pulled back, the kind of calm that comes from decades of delivering complicated news to people who weren't expecting it. "Mrs. Boudreau," she said, or should I say, Ms. Boudreau. "I've been waiting 11 years for someone to bring me that ledger, or ask me the right question. Your mother came to me in 1998. She was very specific." She opened a file. "Property deed, 3618 Charter Street, the building my restaurant sat inside, held not by me, not by Simone's investment group, but by the Odile Boudreau Family Trust, established 27 years earlier." "Your mother didn't just buy the building," Marceline said. "She protected it. The trust includes a standing clause. Any commercial operator leasing this property must retain a Boudreau family member in an active decision-making role in that business. If that condition is ever violated, the lease terminates automatically. No notice period, no cure window. Immediate." I sat back in the leather chair. "Simone doesn't know any of this." "Simone," Marceline said, glancing at a second folder, "signed a standard commercial lease 5 years ago when she came on as your partner. I doubt she ever read past page 2. Most people don't." Then she slid a third document across the table, and I understood why my mother had waited this long. "There's something else," Marceline said. "Your mother named a co-trustee in 2013, 2 years before she passed. Someone she trusted to watch over this from the inside, in case you were ever pushed out and didn't know to fight back." I looked at the name on the page. Theo Marchand. I drove straight back to the restaurant. Theo was in the kitchen, breaking down a case of shrimp, same as any Tuesday. "You knew," I said. He set down his knife. "Your mother asked me 12 years ago, before you'd even hired me full-time. She interviewed me herself, off the books, before you ever met me for the official interview. She wanted someone in that kitchen who'd tell her the truth if something ever went wrong here after she was gone." He wiped his hands slowly. "I told her yes because I believed in what you were building. I never thought I'd actually have to use it. 12 years, Theo." "I know." He looked at me steady, no apology in it, only conviction. I wasn't going to say anything unless it got this far. She was very clear about that. She said, "Let Camille build her whole life without a chaperone. Only step in if someone tries to take it from her. I stood in my own kitchen and felt something that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite relief. Something closer to being fully seen by a woman who'd been dead 11 years and had still somehow arranged to protect me from a threat that hadn't even existed yet when she did it. Marceline moved fast once I gave the word. Two things surfaced within 3 weeks that changed the shape of everything. First, the investor pitch deck. The 22 pages Julian had put together for Crescent Table Hospitality Group claimed, in writing, that the founding chef has agreed to transition to a consulting role effective Q1 2026. I had never agreed to anything. I had never even seen the document until it landed in a printer tray by accident. 6 investors had wired a combined $1.4 million into Simone's expansion fund, based on a claim that was, in plain terms, a lie. Second, Julian had filed, under Crescent Table's name, a trademark application for Chef's Legacy Bowl, the exact name he'd printed on that laminated menu insert over my mother's gumbo. He'd also submitted a provisional patent filing referencing a proprietary Creole spice methodology, built entirely from watching me cook it, without my knowledge or consent. My mother's recipe, filed under a stranger's company name. I read both documents at my kitchen table at midnight, and for the first time since the badge came off my door, I didn't feel cold. I felt something much more useful, clear. Simone finally called the partner meeting she'd promised in September, 4 months late, on a Thursday afternoon in January. I suspect she'd been delaying it, waiting for the investment round to close first, so any objection from me would arrive too late to matter. She didn't know Marceline O'Coin would be walking in with me. We sat in the private dining room, the same room where 6 investors had eaten dinner without my knowledge months earlier. Simone had a printed agenda. Julian sat beside her in a blazer that looked like it cost more than a week of our food budget. "Camille," Simone began, "we wanted to talk through a transition plan that reflects where the business is headed. We think it's time to formalize your role as consulting chef, which comes with—" "Before you finish that sentence," Marceline said, sliding a folder onto the table, "I need to walk you through a few things." Simone's smile faltered for the first time I'd ever seen. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "Marceline O'Coin. I represent the Odile Boudreau Family Trust, which has held title to this building since 1987. She opened the folder. "Ms. Delacroix, your lease agreement contains a clause requiring a Boudreau family member in an active decision-making role at all times. The proposal you just described, removing Camille from operational authority, would trigger automatic lease termination, effective immediately upon execution." Julian sat forward. "We've never seen that clause. It's on page 14, Marceline said evenly. "Section 9. I'd recommend reading full lease agreements before signing them." Simone's face had gone the particular shade of pale that comes from watching a plan collapse faster than you can rebuild it. "This is insane. We have investors. We have a pitch." "About that," Marceline said, and I watched her produce the second folder. "The pitch deck presented to your investors states that Camille agreed to step down from an active role. She did not. That representation, made to secure over $1 million in investment, appears to constitute securities fraud under Louisiana law, and I'd strongly advise you retain independent counsel before this conversation goes any further." Julian's jaw tightened. Simone said nothing. She was doing the math, I could see it, the same math I'd done in Marceline's office 3 weeks earlier, except she was arriving at the answer far too late to change it. I hadn't said a single word yet. "One more item," Marceline said, almost gently now, and slid a final page across the table, a trademark search result. "Mr. Reyes, you filed an application to trademark Chef's Legacy Bowl and a provisional patent describing a spice methodology, both derived directly from a recipe developed by Odile Boudreau and never publicly disclosed by Camille. We'll be filing an opposition, and given the timeline, a claim for unjust enrichment." Julian looked at Simone. Simone looked at the folder. Neither of them looked at me. I finally spoke. "I built this kitchen with my hands, and my mother built the ground underneath it before either of you ever walked through that door. You tried to take my name off it in a week. She spent 40 years making sure you couldn't." Simone's lease terminated within 30 days, exactly as the trust required. The investment round collapsed once 2 investors' attorneys reviewed the pitch deck and found the same misrepresentation Marceline had flagged. Julian's trademark application was withdrawn before the opposition even needed to be filed. His own attorney advised him it wasn't survivable. Simone came by the restaurant once, in February, after everything had settled. She stood in the doorway of my office, the one that used to be ours, and said, "I didn't think you'd fight." "I didn't think I'd have to," I said, "but I had help I didn't know I had." She didn't apologize, not really. She said she hoped I'd land on my feet, The way people say things when they want credit for kindness without actually offering any. I told her I hoped the same for her, and I meant it in the plain, uncomplicated way you mean well for someone you no longer need anything from. Here's what I want you to take from this. I spent 5 years thinking I had to share credit for my own life's work just to keep it safe. I was wrong. What actually kept it safe was a woman who never explained herself, who trusted the people she loved enough to protect them quietly instead of loudly, and who understood that real security doesn't announce itself until the moment you need it most. I run Maison Boudreau alone now, with Theo beside me the way he's been for 12 years, and my mother's name back on the wall where it belongs. The gumbo recipe stayed exactly where it always was, nowhere but in my hands. Have you ever found out, later than you should have, that someone was protecting you the whole time without ever saying a word? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear it.